Mesdames et messieurs, je vous accueille tous aujourd'hui et je vous souhaite la bienvenue au nom de l'ILOB et du CERBAL, le Centre canadien d'études de recherche en bilinguisme et en aménagement linguistique. Welcome to the third OB Research Forum of the season. The forums are here to provide a platform for meetings, exchanges, sharing of ideas, sharing of research, and bringing together a variety of guests, international, local, national speakers, all related to the domains of second language teaching and language policy. Open to all. We're always happy to have you come, but also open to all virtually because we are broadcasting the presentations live. There's a link that you can find on the CERBAL forums page. So if you're ever off campus and you're interested, you can always click on that link and see. A lot of these presentations are also recorded so that you can see them later on at a later date. So if you see something that you love today and you want to share it with others, please feel free to point them to those links. Nous avons une très belle programmation aujourd'hui. Ça fait partie de ces conférences qui vont avoir lieu tout au long de l'année. Donc la troisième de 4 pour l'automne, il y en aura d'autres au printemps. Et encore une fois, je vous invite à jeter un coup d'œil sur le site de l'ILOB et le site des forums pour voir l'horaire. Nous aurons une dernière présentation au mois de décembre. Je vous invite à vous joindre à nous le 9 décembre au 157 Séraphin Marion, au pavillon des diplômés Alex Trebek, dans la salle 116, où il va y avoir une présentation commanditée par l'ambassade de France avec le professeur Christian Olivier, qui va venir de l'Université de La Réunion, professeur en sciences du langage et didactique des langues. La présentation va avoir comme titre d'une perspective actionnelle à une approche socio-interactionnelle et des tâches ancrées dans la vie réelle en didactique des langues, dépasser les limites des situations de classe. Donc, un sujet qui devrait être très intéressant. Je vous invite à vous joindre à nous en personne ou virtuellement à ce moment-là. But for now, I would like to one last time welcome you all, and then we will move on to today's presentation. I will ask my dear colleague Marie-Josée Hamel, who's also the director at CERBAL, to introduce her speaker for today. Thank you.
Thank you, merci. Alors, j'ai mon chapeau de directrice du CERBAL, mais celui aussi de la responsable du GRILT. Le GRILT, c'est le groupe de recherche interdisciplinaire en langue et technologie, dont j'ai la responsabilité et dont Francis est membre. Et donc, c'est le groupe aujourd'hui qui parraine ce forum. Ça me fait grand plaisir, en fait, d'avoir Francis comme invité aujourd'hui. Je vous fais un petit topo sur la vie de Francis. Alors, Francis est détenteur d'un doctorat en éducation en langue seconde et étrangère de la Ohio State University. Il est aujourd'hui professeur agrégé à la faculté d'éducation de notre université et il se spécialise dans les domaines de la didactique des langues secondes, en lien très fort avec les technologies. Il est actuellement co-directeur de l'unité de recherche multiplicité et expérimentation transdisciplinaire.
Plus maintenant.
Il l'était.
Il était.
Mais très certainement en charge d'un nouveau groupe de recherche, ce groupe qui s'appelle Educlang, dont certains d'entre nous sont affiliés. Francis pourra nous en glisser mot. Et j'aimerais aussi dire que Francis est un bon collègue parce qu'il collabore en tant qu'enseignant à notre programme avec nous dans le programme de didactique des langues secondes, dont il a été coordinateur et co-coordinateur. Et nous avons fait ça ensemble un peu, donc on se connaît un petit peu là. Sa recherche s'inspire donc de Francis, entre autres des travaux de Gilles Deleuze, et on a hâte d'en entendre parler. La théorie des littératies multiples et s'intéresse à l'adaptation des enseignants et des apprenants de langue seconde à des contextes d'enseignement et d'apprentissage non familiers, à l'intégration des technologies, de l'information et de la communication dans l'enseignement des langues secondes. Ces travaux ont été publiés, présentés à l'échelle nationale et internationale. Merci, Francis.
Merci, Marie-Josée. Thank you. Hello. And thank you for being here today. And I would like also to thank the OLB as well as the GRILT for inviting me here today to share some of my thoughts around the notion of teacher education in computer-assisted language learning call. So, well, I have to say that as a teacher educator and a researcher in CALL, computer-assisted language learning, I have a problem. And my problems is related to the fact that language teachers are increasingly required not only to constantly adapt to technological innovations, to manage fast change, but to be competent with an ever-changing range of technological tools that learners are using both inside and outside the classroom, which means that a teacher constantly have to adapt, constantly have to transform, and to work within very unstable environment. And you have to place all of this, of course, within a larger context of accountability, standardization of teaching, and more and more demands that are placed on our teachers. So, but what I'm saying also is that these issues are also associated with teacher educators and researchers in CALL, because we ourselves have also to adapt constantly to technological innovation, to manage fast change, and to be competent with an increasing changing range of technological tools. And so that we can adapt, we can better support teachers in integrating, language teachers in integrating technologies into their practices. So which means that we also have to be able to work within very unstable environment as well, and be constantly changing. So one element also that needs to be, that as part of this problem, it's the whole notion of the 21st century competencies. And in fact, when you talk about that, what will be important for the future citizens of the world, what will be the necessary competencies? And we can see that technology is a big part of that. And some of these competencies, which are to be creative and capacity to communicate and collaborate using diverse technology, the capacity to collect, analyze large amount of data, etc., also have to be taken into consideration, both by teachers, by teacher educators, and by researchers. So which means that they themselves have to, in a way, being able to develop these competencies in order to be able to teach them, or even to research them, or to educate teachers about them. So, so all of this is a part of that problem. However, research shows that both pre and in-service teachers, and I'm talking about recent research, still do not feel prepared to face the challenges generated by the integration of technology in the classroom. And so we may wonder then what's happening here, because there is a large body of knowledge that has been developed throughout the years around the notion of technology integration. We have great guidelines, we have a set of best practices, we have standards to guide teachers. So what's happening? So a number of experts in the CALL field have started to question not only the adequacy of teacher training in CALL, but also the very method used in much of the research intended to help language teachers effectively and efficiently integrate technology into their practices. So, as I said, despite all of this progress, and great one, the question still remains: how can we better support language teachers in implementing technological innovation into their teaching practices? So, I don't know about you, but when I read this question, we can think about it as a problem. I don't know if we can ever find a response to that question. I mean, really. When you think about it. So maybe it may be because this is not the right question to ask. Maybe. Or it's maybe because we have to change of way of perceiving problem. What's a problem then? So all of this triggered some thoughts Thinking within all of these elements, some thoughts started to emerge in relationship to the notion of problem. So yes, exactly. What's a problem? Can a problem be solved? Can we think differently about the notion of a problem? Not necessarily as a challenge that needs to be resolved, but maybe as something that can open new ways, new possibilities, potential. So this led me to the notion of potential. Well, once again, when we talk about potential, we talk about the possible, the not yet actualized, the yet to come. So is it something that we can control? What does this entail? Is it the potential to reach something predetermined, or is it something that we can reach whatever potential we can reach? So, and what about the relationship between potential and change? Because this is what we are talking about. We are talking about change, innovation, integration, so change. So what's the relationship of potential with change? So when we talk about change, what is it? What's a change? So what does it entail? So what's the relationship between change and instability? Difference, because it's a transformation, there's a differentiation. What's the difference also between, what's the relationship between change and the unstable, the chaos, and all of these elements. So, and of course, you have to place all of these questions within an educational context. As self-educators and teacher educators, what is our relationship with change? What is our relationship with potential? Are we comfortable with change and the unknown, with the possible, the yet to come as educators? Are the ways we perform teacher education in call right now, is it conducive to change and potential? I mean, I talked about earlier about now this discourse, this increasing discourse around notion of accountability and control of what teachers are doing in the classroom. So when we talk about now good teaching practices, they are necessarily, I mean, most of the time they are associated with stability. They are regularity, with order. And it seems that notion of messiness, change, instability seems to be a little bit marginalized from the teaching practices. And most of the time, when we talk to teachers, particularly when we talk with teachers, we talk about with technologies, they are often expressed as challenges to overcome. Like, okay, this is going to be chaos, disorder in my classroom, is going to have to have to change everything. No. So it's not something we are very comfortable with. And I would say that it is something as a researcher also, we may want to ask the same questions. I mean, how comfortable are we with change and instability and messiness in our research? What about potential and what is our relationship with as researchers with potential? Our ways of conducting research, particularly in teacher education in call, is it conducive to change and potential? When we are so used as researchers to work within norms, hierarchies, definition, conceptualizations, and regularities, patterns. So what does that do to potential? I mean, to irregularities. How comfortable are we with this? And the same way we can say at first glance when we talk about research in the field of teacher education in call, it seems that ambiguity, instability, messiness seems to be dissociated with scientific research as well. And rigor. So And this is why I liked so much this particular question that kind of also drove my reflections, how my teacher education in Core live. I liked this question for different reasons. And the first one is because it encompasses all the thoughts that were generated, all the thoughts that I've been sharing with you so far, when the thoughts that were generated when I collided with the problem of teacher education in COL. And also because this question talks about, talks to the potential of teacher education, what it might become, but also to the way that this potential might actualize, might become. And also I liked it because this is another question, at least personally, it's another question that I often ask, or we often ask ourselves as teacher educators in COL. And because it seems that our thoughts and practices seems to be shaped primarily around the question of what teacher education is and what it should be. And however, if we agree that the challenges COL teachers face nowadays are indeed complex, ambiguous, ever-changing, and unpredictable, then some reflection regarding what teacher education in COL might have the potential to become might be necessary in order to work both conceptually and methodologically within this constant changeability and instability of this phenomenon. So, and finally, I liked this question because it was a point of entry into the universe of Deleuze and Guattari. This is actually the question that Todme asked, and Todme is one of the experts in Deleuze, and that's a question that he asked in his first chapter in the book that he wrote about Deleuze. And when I saw that, it resonated automatically with me because of all the elements that I've talked to you about already, and so it how can I say that? It drove me, not forced me, but it compelled me, here we go, to dive more deeply into the work of these philosophers. So I have to say that I'm going to introduce you to a very modest introduction of the work of Deleuze, philosophy of immanence. We're talking about here a huge body of work that is going from the 1950s to the 1990s. He died in 1995. And Deleuze is one of the hardest thinker to read for several reasons, and one of them is because he was the philosopher of instability, and his work was unstable, which means that you would read one piece of work at one point, you think you would get it, and then you read another one, it would be completely different thing. The same word that he used in one book would mean something completely different in another book. And you will understand why later when I talk about his view on life and reality. So that makes it very difficult to grasp. And also because he used very familiar word, very familiar term, but in a completely different way. So you also have to understand. And this changes constantly, constant change. So we need to, so that really places you. So for me, who was interested in adaptation in change, that was a very nice, a very good place to be, because it really placed me in this very unstable and uncomfortable place conceptually to help me think through these notions of adaptation and change. Okay? So, in a nutshell, we can say that for Deleuze and Guattari, they had, for Deleuze particularly, and also Guattari, because later in his work with Guattari, what he wanted to do generally is to really felt that the way that our lives were constructed was intrinsically connected to the way that we think about ourselves and the world. So for him, thinking differently might be one way to change our lives. He was really interested in the way that we think and change the way that we think about ourselves and the world. So it was definitely an ontological work, okay, about reality and our place within that world. So, so for him also, thinking differently implied breaking away from assumptions, habits, routine, pre-established ways of doing and conceiving things. And in my case, it will imply breaking away from all of it in relationship to teacher education in Colin as well as the associated research. So, so Deleuze then asked a question. He was interested in that question, how one might live. So he created this innovative ontology, which is the study of what is reality, that does not engage in the separation of what something is and what something is capable of. So there is no separation between what something is and its potential. Okay? So, and within that then, the creation board between, the border between creation and discovery become irrelevant, okay? There is no, it doesn't matter, the difference between a discovery and something that is created, okay? So, of course, we're talking about the philosophy of immanence, so we can say that it's an opposition of the philosophy of transcendence. So it's really interested in the immanent nature of reality. So for Deleuze, immanence should be considered as the virtual, a virtual, pre-personal, not pre-given, and asignifying plane where life operates within as opposed to beyond human and material experiences. So it's very important here, there are different terms are very important here. We're talking about here a plane, which means that everything is at the same level. There is no hierarchy, there is nothing, there is no separation between elements of the world, okay? And more particularly, there is no divide between human and material elements, okay? So, so there is no binaries between inside, outside, material, immaterial, mind and matter, human, non-human, etc., etc. So what it is there, it's all about interconnections, interconnection between human and non-human entities that produce reality. So reality then, reality is constituted of two realms. The first one is the virtual. And this is going to be a little bit more concrete. I'll try to provide you with concrete example later when I'm going to talk about some concepts, specific concepts. So the virtual is the plane of consistency. Once again, everything is at the same level, plane, where being is indivisible. It's all the same unity. And where there are no hierarchy. The virtual is not accessible to human consciousness, but is constantly folding and folding and refolding. And this is folding and refolding into different expression. An expression of this folding, unfolding, and refolding is based on the forces of difference and not identity. So which means that it comes from Deleuze's dissertation on difference and repetition. Broadly speaking, what it means is that there is nothing repeats itself the same way, never. The only thing that repeats itself is difference, okay? So if we are interested in change and constant change, we should focus more on difference and not so much on the substance of change is difference and not so much identity, okay? So, and within the virtual, you also have forces, and such as the force of difference, flows and movements within which the virtual expresses itself. So we have a plane of consistency, and through movement, flow, intensity, these elements will express themselves in a particular way and in the actual. The actual constitutes the observable reality, the expression of the virtual, okay? So what it means is that we're talking about here, we are not talking about a transcendent virtual. We are talking about an immanent virtual, so that it is immanent to the actual. The virtual is always present to anything that we can see. It's there, it's immanent to it, and it's working within it. So they are all real. The virtual this is why the virtual is as real as the actual. And both these two realms are constantly interacting with each other, but never in the same way. This is why nothing can never repeat itself the same way, never. Okay? So, the study of what there is begins not when we see conceptual stability, but rather when we see reality in terms of constant differences instead of as fixed or fluid identities. Okay? Well, therefore, to conceive living is to conceive what is and what might be. It is to offer an account of what it is for something to be living and an opening into ways of to live. So Deleuze created then, and how do we do that? How do we conceive living how do we account for something to be living and an ongoing and an opening onto ways to live? And Deleuze said that we do that through encounters with problems. It's when we collide in life, we collide with problems, that thoughts are created and concepts are created. And concepts are there not to identify elements of the world, but rather to grasp their potential. And it's through thought, not knowledge, but through thought that we can get a sense of the virtual, of the element that is invisible, and really touch, palpate. He uses the term palpate. And I'm doing that because that's the example that he gives, is that you see when you see the doctor and there's something in your body, it hurts. Okay? What does a doctor do? It palpates. It palpates to get a sense, to get an idea of what's happening in the invisible, in the virtual, through your reactions, through what it can feel, his own knowledge is going to get a sense of this visible. So that's what we do. We use concepts to palpate the potential, the possibilities of life. So, and we do that by palpating, by being in contact with the real. By touching in contact with the real, we can get a sense, palpate their reality. So with Guattari, Felix Guattari, he created a plethora of concepts, but I'm going to focus on just some of them here today. It's agencement, rhizome, sense, becoming, affect, and experimentation. And I'm focusing on those because those are the ones I'm using right now in my own research. And once again, these concepts are not there to identify, but to grasp the potential of life, okay? So let's start with an agencement. And it's actually the concepts that really started to really become very interested in their work. It's the notion of an agencement. So in English, agencement has been translated into assemblage. I don't like the translation because I don't feel, to me at least, it doesn't really reflect this, the temporality of an agencement. The fact that it's not necessarily that is pre-set, such as an assembler. I think about assembling a piece of furniture, you know. We know exactly what we're going to do. We have an idea what the end product is going to be. Each piece has a specific function, etc., etc. But an agencement is not that at all. An agencement it's kind of an arrangement, but it's not predetermined and it's very temporary. Okay, so that's the idea that I could not really feel within when I heard the word assembly. So I'm using the term agencement. I saw other people translate it into arrangement. I like it, I rather that instead of assemblage, but that's all it is. So I'm going to use agencement. So in simple terms, an agencement can be explained as a temporary grouping of relation, as Coleman and Ringrose says. So reality then can be understood as a series of continual agencements. All we know are agencements between intermingling entities, action, movement, emotion, acts, and statement, etc., that are both reacting to and transforming each other. An agencement comprises two axes. The first axis is horizontal and includes two segments, one of content, the virtual, and the other expression, the actual. The second axis, which is vertical, comprises forces of territorialization and reterritorialization, stabilization, this is the intensive, along with forces of deterritorialization. So, very concrete example. This is something, an actualization, okay? This could be expressed as what? It could be expressed as a telephone. What else? A budget line. It could be expressed as a best friend. It could be expressed as what? Nuisance. It could be expressed as a toy. Okay? So all of this expression of this element of the world are part of what this object is, okay? So this expression will transform this object into a toy, a nuisance, etc., etc. And all of this, so this is where we have the expression of it. And all of these elements are possible because of the connection that occurs within the virtual. So the invisible. This can become a toy, maybe because of the connection that occur in your mind about, I don't know, childhood, or your child playing with it, or your cat playing with it, or any kind of connection that may happen in the virtual, that will transform this object into a cellular phone, into whatever, okay? So, and you have then these forces of stabilization. No, this is a cellular phone, that's what it is. And forces of deterioration. No, it could be something else, okay, that plays constantly with each other in the virtual and affect, changes, transform these elements of the world, okay? And in this transformation, there is no hierarchy between the human and the material, which means that an object can transform another object. It all depends on the intensive connection that occurs in the virtual. So in order to illustrate the interconnectivity that occurs both within and between agencements, Deleuze and Guattari refer to the naturally occurring rhizome. Everybody knows what a rhizome is? Who likes to garden? Ah, you do, I know you do what it is, yeah. So what's a rhizome?
Okay, so a rhizome is a type of entity that has really no beginning and no end. If you think of something like pampas grass, for instance, if you've ever planted pampas grass, it starts out with a group of leaves and these very spiky roots that looks like, okay, this might grow well. But once it starts to grow, it goes in all directions, and new shoots come up to the point where you really can't tell what is the origin and what is the end. And if you ever plant pampas grass, make sure you've got it in a sealed container, because digging out would draw it.
Exactly. So that's what a rhizome is. So for Deleuze and Guattari, that's what I mean. All these connections that occur, they are rhizomatic connections, which means that they have no beginning, no end. They are free. They constantly establish connection and interconnection, both within and between themselves, that are neither fixed nor inflexible. Also, like rhizome, agencement may be broken or shattered at a particular connection point, but will reestablish themselves on an either an old or a new line. Therefore, we can never know in advance how agencement will connect and what this connection will produce. So, let's take, for instance, this presentation. This is an agencement. This is an expression of something, okay? It is an agencement of all of the things, of the thought that I told you about earlier, and this presentation, the format of a presentation, a Prezi, it's an adjustment of all of this, an expression of all of these elements and how they interconnected in the virtual. You understand that? So now that I'm presenting this presentation to you, you are becoming part of the agencement, okay? And you are going to transform this presentation. I don't know how it's going to be expressed. Smile. Or there are different expressions of that presentation, and all of this expression of this presentation will depend on the type of rhizomatic connection that occurred between you and that presentation, okay? Maybe you would say, oh, this is terrible, or this is great, or, I mean, it all depends on what's happening right now, okay? And this, no one can predict it. No one will know the kind of maybe because, oh, the color pink, oh, I like it, this reminds me of, we don't know what may happen right now between you and this, all of this are rhizomatic. So, sense then lies at the interconnection of content of expression. This is an expression of a content. A content may be a phone, because this is how you use it most of the time. The content may be what's happening with your kids. Maybe they are using too much and it's a nuisance. The content, this is an expression of that, okay? So, emerging when elements of the world come together as agencement. In other words, sense is produced out of elements that do not in themselves have sense. That is why, for the reason Guattari, sense can only be produced out of nonsense. This alone has nonsense. It's only when it connects with another agencement, like me, that it gets sense emerges. It becomes a phone or an instrument to make a point in a presentation. Okay? Let's say that now this connects with your cats. And I wanted to talk to you about it further, because that notion of affordance is really intrigues me very much, and we can talk about it really so much. I really like that. And so the cat, let's say they have a cat, it's coming here and he's doing this and he's playing with it. So when this element connects with a cat, it becomes sense emerged as being a toy. Okay? So this is what it is. So it's through these interconnections that that we can see that sense may emerge within this. So becoming. And you can see also the interconnection that are occurring with Marie-José here. Notion of affordances and connections are creating. And becoming then, what is becoming? Becoming refers to an act of transformation and how the elements of the world are transformed within agencement. And this is a very important quote. Becoming is certainly not imitating or identifying with something. Neither is it regressing, progressing, neither is it corresponding, establishing corresponding relation. Neither it is producing a filiation or producing through filiation. Becoming is a verb with a consistency on its own. It does not reduce to, lead back to, appearing, being, equaling, or producing. Becoming produces nothing other than itself. Okay? That's a very important quote. So which means that it's not because I call this a phone, but you call this a phone, but it is the same thing. Those are two different becomings. And why is that? Because of what happened in the virtual between you and that phone and me and that phone. Okay? It's an all different expressions. They're all completely different becomings. So affects occur becoming, this transformation, these changes, these that are pure singular creation, expression, becoming occurs through affects. So affect should not be equated with emotion, but rather the capacity of an element of the world to transform each other. So this is where we talk about the forces, the flow that transform an element. So we have all of these elements in the virtual, but they are getting interconnected through affects, and they are transformed. Through this interconnection, their capacity to transform each other will augment or diminish. And this is how we have a hierarchy, etc., etc. But so to the relationship composing and decomposing and modifying an individual, there corresponds intensity that affects it, augmenting or diminishing its power to act. This intensity comes from external parts or from the individual's own part. It's all about also immanence here. During this encounter, which may vary in intensity of affect, anything could potentially happen. So when we enter an agencement, when you enter this agencement of this presentation, affects occur, transformation occur in your mind, and this, of course, depends on the capacity of each element within this connection to transform each other. This is why we can never predict the outcome of an encounter. And this is why an encounter can never reoccur in the same way. Okay. So what matters then is not so much to understand what an element of the world is, but rather to understand what it can do, both within and between agencements. It doesn't matter to know what it is really, but what it matters is to understand how this element in an agencement, what it is capable of doing, what its potential within an agencement, a particular agencement. We know nothing about a body. This is an example of how they use terms in completely different ways. A body, for them, it's an element of the world. It's an entity. Okay. Until we know what we can do, in other words, what its effects are, how they can or cannot enter into composition with other effects, with the effects of another body, either to destroy that body or to be destroyed by it, either to exchange action or passion with it, or to join with it in composing a more powerful body, a body that we're able to create more change within that particular agencement. So experimentation is necessary to reveal the effect of various elements of the world on their surrounding, and more specifically to palpate, to get a sense of how an element of the world functions and produces within agencement. The representation and identification of what there is then becomes less important than exploring the interrelationship of the element of the world and the way they contribute to the emergence of expression of the virtual. So what happened then? What happened when these concepts collided with teacher education in call within the agencement of my research? Change occurred, things were transformed, and one element that emerged is the concept of teacher becoming in call, TBIC. So TBIC is a concept that I called teacher becoming in call, and it emerged what I was thinking within the agencement of teacher education in call and Deleuze and Guattari's work. So once again, TBIC did not actualize as a way to represent, identify teacher education in call, but rather to palpate what it is for teacher education in call to be living and creating new potential for itself, and for the research associated with it by disrupting the habits, routines, expectations, and preconceived way of educating teachers in call and conducting research on the subject. In the conceptualization of TBIC, education has not been replaced, rather, education has transformed into becoming, and is inherent to TBIC. This transformation expresses the immanence, movement, unpredictability, complexity, and creativity of teacher education in call. TBIC focuses on the act of transformation of the element of the world within the agencement associated with teachers, education, research, and call, and also on the way these transformations occur through affects. TBIC acknowledges that there is always more to reality than our body and our mind can perceive and conceive. Therefore, primacy is not given to the actual, as the virtual is considered to be equally relevant. Indeed, TBIC cannot be directly understood, as the virtual and the intensive are always inherent to any perceivable and conceivable actualization in time and space in terms of TBIC. A tear on a teacher's eye when working with technology. This is something, but it's also taking into consideration what made that tear possible and what could be done differently also, what the potential there as well. So TBIC considers all elements of the world to be potentially transformative. A human, a table, an animal, to be potentially transformative in their own way, which means that there is no hierarchy between human and non-human elements. Indeed, TBIC sees the human subject as being decentered for all entities, organic, material, digital, expressive, ethical, technological, etc., can potentially create change through their interaction within agencement. TBIC is in a constant process of becoming other, as TBIC is unpredictable and never repeats itself in the same way. Indeed, TBIC is not simply a matter of identifying with something or progressing, developing towards something. Rather, it is an ever-ending production that is affected by numerous rhizomatic interconnection between human and non-human elements, reacting to and transforming each other through the intensive affect each of its elements is capable of generating within the agencement of call, teachers, education, and research. For that reason, TBIC and TBIC is teacher becoming in call cannot be captured, controlled, or solved, but only created. Let's go back to my notion of a problem. A problem cannot be solved. A problem can be created and can be open to potentiality, to potentials, and recreated through experimentation in contact with elements of the agencement connected with TBIC. Once again, teachers, students, language, technology, curriculum, emotion, regulation, methodology, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, the representations and identification of the element pertaining to TBIC become less important than experimenting the ever-changing field of TBIC. So, in TBIC, we emphasize sense rather than interpretation. Teacher educators, and researchers in call are all part of these agencements, and as such are thinking within TBIC. Not thinking about it, but thinking within it, immanence. Moreover, as elements of the agencements themselves, they are also contributing to the emergence of TBIC. Thus, like anything else in the agencement, they can potentially affect and be affected by any other elements within the agencement, be they human, material, ethical, digital, linguistic, vegetal, animal, etc., etc. As Deleuze notes, we are learning nothing for those who say, do as I do. Our only teachers are those who tell us to do with me. As such, only through experimentation can researchers, teachers, and teacher educators palpate all the possibilities that call offers within their agencement. Okay. So in this view, in a Deleuzian view, concepts are meant to work. They are very practical things. They are meant to be used and to work. So I've been using TBIC in my own research, and I put it to work. And I'm going to illustrate how I've been doing that recently. And as I said, constantly changing, constantly transforming. I'm going to go through this. Basically, this slide was just to tell you that I was not alone. There are an increasing body of researchers that are working within the work of, within the realms, the field, the perspective of Deleuze and Guattari in many fields, including education, but also language education, technology, and teacher education. So if we can talk about it a little bit more, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move to a project that I've been working on using TBIC. And it's about designing an online course in call. This online course had the goal was to design and thinking about all the elements, how to really help teachers work within unstable environments and language teachers, and in regard to the integration of technology, within the instability that the integration of technology may create. So, I'm trying to design an online course to support language teachers to get an insight into the generative possibilities of their becoming in call and experiment with the following competencies: the capacity to be creative, the capacity to work within unstable environment, the capacity to communicate and collaborate using diverse technology, and the capacity to collect, analyze, and interpret vast amount of information to make informed decisions and act in a timely fashion. So here I'm talking about experimenting with this element. So experimenting means that to allow teachers to get a sense of, palpate what these particular competencies are capable of doing within the agencement where they work, okay? So within their own agencements, what these elements are capable of doing. So this project is also an experimentation with TBIC, online teaching, and design-based research. So the initial actualization of the course that occurred actually last winter was based mainly on the review of the literature associated with the design of online course, teacher education in core, Deleuze and Guattari in teacher education, 21st century competencies, educational design, design-based research. And during this 12-week long course, students navigated through 5 modules that focus on diverse topics associated with ICT integration in the English classroom. Within each module, students had to meet specific targets that corresponded to 5 stages of design thinking. People are familiar with design thinking? Most of you? So it is a very popular now framework, methodological framework that is promoted now in the school to enable learners to develop the 21st century competencies, and particularly notion related to creativity, being able to make informed decisions, basically to train the future entrepreneurs of the world. It is so popular now that there is a call right now for the Canadian Review of Education, I think, on just that, on design thinking. So I used that in the course because of its popularity. It was something that was promoted in some of the school boards around here in regards to the integration of technology. So teachers had to work within design thinking, and also because in my mind, when I read about it, I made some connection with Deleuze's work in terms of using a problem as a productive force, as a creative force. So I tried to integrate that into the agencement of the course, to also myself being able to experiment with it. So TBIC in a nutshell, design thinking has 5 stages: discovery, interpretation, ideation, experimentation, and evolution. And if you want to find out more about it, you just need to Google it, and you have easy access to it. With a toolkit as well. And also there was a community service learning, yes? Okay, community service learning component, and where students had to work within the community for 30 hours, and they had to write a blog about their project. They had to work on a project on integrating technology with the guidance of the supervisor in the field. The prompts of their blog were inspired by TBIC, and so some prompts were like, what connection can be made, how may this affect your experience, etc., etc. Also, at the end of the session, students were required to provide a visual representation of their current views on technology and using a diversity of media. So I wanted to use another way of expressing beside words, as a way also for them to experiment with other ways and express what may have contributed to the emergence of an expression of experiences with technology, and what contributed to the actualization, and to consider future implications. And there was also a regular course options where students had to work on technology integration plan based on a real or a fictional situation, and they had to also contribute to forum discussions. And try to also use TBIC-inspired questions such as what unsettled you, disturb, what does that produce, what sustain or challenge stabilization and stabilization forces together. And also they were required to create a multimedia poster. So there were a total of 12 students, and I invited them at the end of the course to follow the ethics. So ethics also it's a force in the research agencement, as you may know. And two students granted me the authorization to use their work as material for the research and also to be part of the interviews. And they both had chosen the community service learning options. And I'm currently conducting a RISO analysis. I don't have time to go too much into what is RISO analysis, but RISO analysis is a type of analysis that is based on the work of Deleuze and the notion of the rhizome, and that is not necessarily interested in interpreting data, but rather understanding what the data can do within a particular research agencement. So what is produced? What the potential? How sense emerged there? So we really focus on sense and palpation rather than interpretation and making meaning. Okay. So just to finish, through this RISO analysis, some line of thoughts were created, and line of thoughts in relationship to the explicitness of TBIC. And so far, the course was designed so much around, it was very implicit. We never talked about TBIC explicitly in the course. And I wonder what that may do if I start doing that. So maybe I'm going to start trying to make students understand this concept of TBIC and work within it and see what does that do to their experience, to their own becoming in call. Also, some lines of thoughts related to design-based research, and traditionally design-based research has been seen as iterative process. Iterative process of intervention based on the analysis, the development, implementation, and evaluation, grounding the analysis of the need, the task, the tool, and the usage. But it feels like more and more through this RISO analytic and experimenting within the research agencement is becoming more like a design-based, as a rhizomatic process of analysis, development, and implementation, evaluation, grounded in the RISO analysis of elements of the research agencement, and contribute to the emergence of multiple actualizations of becoming in call. So because it's an agencement, we need to understand that analysis, development, implementation, evaluation are also transforming within that agencement. So more thinking, more experimentation with that, this is where kind of one of the line I want to go to in the future. And also now writing a piece on the notion of distance, because it's online, the distance as a productive force. Another way to conceptualize a concept to grasp potential, create a concept of a distance as a productive force, and how that can be worked within the design of a course. The course, once again, always thinking about potential, the potential of this course to become whatever it will become, so that as researchers, teacher educators, we are comfortable working with instability, change, constant change, and hopefully the teachers who are attending the course will also feel that kind of comfort. So that's it, some references. And this is the name of, Marie-José said about the research group I am part with, and there are some members. Marie-José is also part of this group. And the website is currently under construction, but it's going to be up soon. So you can still take the URL and then go back. So you could get updates on the work that we are doing in this group, including mine and not mine, also the work of all of their members. And Marie-José also will become an associate researcher in that. So that's it. Thank you. I'm going to exit here. It was a lot of information, right? No, yeah.
I'm very attracted to these ideas because I am also frustrated by the attempts sometimes in education or in a lot of social science to try and make things predictable and therefore almost almost mechanical. When we know that, especially in something as complicated as language teaching or classroom activity, there's nothing predictable. There's something, a spider on the table freaks out the student.
You can do a lot of things, yeah.
And yet at the same time, the tension is for the new student who's saying, I want to know what to do. I'm wondering how you handle that tension in the end. In the end, when they say, but I want to know how to use, for example, the iPad in the classroom. If I tell them, it is unpredictable, but at the same time, I want to give them something nonetheless to
yeah, well, and because it is an agencement, as I said, there's always forces of stabilization. So this is one of the forces of stabilization, and so you have to be able to work within both. And so part of my research is to really think about these issues. How is what these forces are affecting what's going on within that research? And I think that this is also where the thoughts around the explicitness of TBIC, by making it maybe more explicit, by talking about it, by teaching it basically, maybe this will also help students change their way of thinking, the way that they think education and the way that they think their own becoming. I'm not becoming an image of what a good teacher is. I am becoming my own becoming. So I think that for them to get a sense, understanding of that may change that, but I'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. You said that you taught a course within this framework, and I'm wondering what you have observed actually in terms of those different forces through the students. Some students who really behave wonderfully well in that unpredictable space. Actually, this is what they need actually to learn and to go forward, and some who, as Jeremy said, do not. And I'm wondering what have you observed in the classroom between those different forces in terms of learning happening through the different forces?
Yeah, well, we are currently really analyzing right now, and some of the things that we notice is well, we can only work with the 2 students who accepted to be part of the research, and they were students who went into the community service language learning, which was in a way, I was not very surprised by that, because in terms of their engagement, it's something that I could notice throughout the session. And I think that maybe when we talk about these forces, I really think it's a line of thought that I need to pursue, the role of this kind of experiences. We need to be immersed in a complete setting where you really have to deal with it, and to work with somebody. Also, there is some kind of responsibility there. So what does this sense of responsibility does to the project and their becoming? So all of these questions I will ask. And also this notion of a distance is one of the elements that we could notice, because within the experience, the becoming of one of the students, it was a big element that came out in the way that he expressed his own becoming, in a sense that distance first, where something was a force of stabilization as a problem that needed to be solved, but then throughout, it changed, it transformed into actually something good, productive force that will enable him to work, think through in ways that he wouldn't have been able to if he didn't have that kind of a distance. So we are playing with this notion of distance as well. So are some of examples of the way that it is, but there are many, many, many others. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could describe the profile of a student who could do this well.
I could not, because I don't know that I'd like to work with profiles though. Because it would be a way for me to identify the students. I don't know. I rather not. Within my that kind of line of thinking, I rather not work with profiles. I rather see what's happening, and really work with I don't want to work with what makes him similar to somebody else. I want to work with difference. I want to work with potential, what makes it, what the singularity of their experience, and see what that singularity produces and creates. So that's basically what it is. So not with profiles, no. I mean, this is not the line of research where we come out with profiles, that's for sure. That's for sure.
So what sorts of things would a student have to sort of abandon in order to really become immersed in this?
They all have to abandon a lot. One force, actually, to go back to your question, is evaluation. Evaluation, that's a huge force in that process of becoming. The power of grades, the power of I'm still working on it. How can we really evaluate without comparing to something? So that's kind of yeah, it's a tension there. I'm trying to work within and see. I haven't found a concept yet to work with that. We'll see. It hasn't emerged yet. We'll see. Yeah. Oui, vas-y.
C'est vrai que la modélisation est une tentative de calmer le chaos. Moi, en ergonomie, c'est sûr qu'on essaie de comprendre l'environnement pour mieux le transformer. C'est vraiment l'objectif de l'ergonomie didactique. Et que dans cet objectif-là, de vouloir comprendre pour transformer, il y a un espace pour la modélisation. Moi, personnellement, j'y crois. C'est pas qu'on essaie de mettre des gens dans des carcans, mais c'est aussi, ça nous permet de stabiliser des concepts, de revoir et de repenser des concepts. En ce moment, je pense que l'analyse qualitative que j'amène de plus en plus dans ma recherche, par contre, et je crois que nécessairement avec Deleuze, on est dans l'introspectif puis le qualitatif, amène des perspectives importantes sur la compréhension justement de dispositifs, qu'ils soient hybrides, distanciels, sur la formation. Mais je trouve qu'en quelque part, ce que tu nous as présenté, Francis, c'est vraiment une question de posture. Voir le chaos, voir l'instabilité, voir des problèmes, c'est une question de perception. Et je pense que si on veut travailler au niveau des perceptions, il faut, en ce moment, je fais de l'analyse de représentation professionnelle de nos enseignants de cours hybrides. Et si on regarde les représentations professionnelles d'enseignants novices versus d'enseignants experts, par exemple, d'enseignants experts, on se rend compte que chez les novices, on n'a pas cette perception du chaos et du problème et du challenge vis-à-vis de la technologie parce qu'on est né dedans. Et donc, je trouve que cette perception du chaos vient d'une génération de chercheurs ou de penseurs qui finalement est plus
à l'aise, assise. Oui.
Non, mais plus voir le chaos, c'est ne pas être dedans finalement. Quand on est dedans, puis qu'on vit avec, on n'a peut-être pas ce questionnement-là. Et donc, on va pas apprendre et développer ses compétences professionnelles de la même façon que quand on perçoit un chaos et qu'on se dit qu'il faut rentrer dedans. Donc, si on travaille sur nos représentations professionnelles et si on les compare avec d'autres, on accède mieux finalement à cette compréhension du dispositif, à cette idée de changement, cette idée de transformation.
Je pense que, oui, je pense que, comme je l'ai dit, oui, parfait. Je pense que ce qu'il y a, si on parle de posture par rapport à cela, c'est que je pense que traditionnellement, nous en tant que chercheurs, on a tendance, jusqu'à maintenant, à donner énormément d'importance à, je parle d'identité, c'est-à-dire la posture les régularités, pour de très bonnes raisons, parce que comme tu l'as dit, c'est quelque chose dont on a besoin pour stabiliser, comprendre certains éléments. Je pense que certaines fois, ça a été fait au dépens de la différence, du potentiel, pour quelque chose puisse devenir quelque chose d'autre. Et je pense qu'il est peut-être temps aussi de repenser, peut-être à l'envers, et de voir qu'est-ce que ça pourrait faire si on pensait les choses un petit peu différemment. Ça ne veut pas dire que l'un est mieux que l'autre. Comme tu dis si bien, c'est une autre façon de regarder les choses. Et donc, je pense que si on propose ces deux possibilités, ces options, peut-être que ça va créer des choses très intéressantes aussi. Oui, c'est pas nécessairement incompatible, mais c'est être capable de travailler au sein de ses forces. Et je pense sincèrement que nous, en tant que chercheurs, on participe à cette création, à ces processus, à ces changements, à ces transformations. Donc, c'est aussi important pour nous, en tant que chercheurs, d'être capables de penser, de travailler au sein de cela, d'être à l'aise aussi avec le stable, mais aussi être capable de travailler avec complètement l'instable et le différent. Donc, moi, je les vois comme étant quelque chose qui travaille ensemble. Et donc, on pourrait regarder cette posture plus de ce côté ou plus de ce côté. Moi, j'aime bien préférer regarder pour l'instant du côté du chaotique, du différent et qu'est-ce que ça fait, qu'est-ce que ça produit en fait par rapport à ça. Ça serait peut-être et donc c'est pour ça aussi que j'ai deux types de recherche, une recherche deleuzienne et une recherche non deleuzienne, qui me permet en fait de travailler, de créer des ponts, de vraiment vivre, nager au sein de deux univers complètement différents, point de vue conceptuel et méthodologique aussi.
Je trouve ça extrêmement intéressant. Ça poursuit, ça va dans la même ligne que quelques trucs que j'ai fait dans le passé sur la falsification, sur le rôle de la falsification. Ça va dans le même sens. La position se présente plus souple que celle-là. Mais je voudrais revenir à la notion d'arrangement, un arrangement qui est ici et maintenant. Alors, lorsque toi-même, en tant que chercheur, tu prononces, c'est un arrangement.
Oui.
C'est un arrangement qui n'a pas de validité en dehors du moment où tu le prononces. Alors, qu'est-ce que tu dis à tes étudiants professeurs? Je dis ça maintenant, mais tout à l'heure dans le corridor, ça aura plus de même.
Ben, c'est ça en fait.
Okay.
C'est ça en fait. Je leur explique que c'est ça, et c'est ça en fait leur expérience. C'est-à-dire que je pense que les tensions qui existent, c'est que lorsqu'on essaie de leur donner trop de modèles, ils ont tendance à vouloir reproduire. Je leur essaie de reproduire que c'est pas possible de reproduire. Et donc de les mettre dans ces zones d'inconfort, ça va les forcer un petit peu à peut-être aussi prendre conscience de certaines choses c'est pas un processus facile. Ne vous inquiétez pas. Je vous parle maintenant de Deleuze, mais j'ai eu des moments avec Deleuze qui n'étaient pas faciles, où je l'ai rejeté. J'ai travaillé avec des études, je travaille avec des étudiants, des doctorants maintenant, c'est pareil. On a des fois des discussions très vives ensemble, parce que ça demande vraiment un travail de rejet de certaines choses auxquelles on était vraiment très attachés, comme par exemple le rejet de notre propre agence, par exemple. Le rejet de plein de choses qui fait que ça nécessite son travail. Oui. Mais je pense que lorsqu'on arrive à ce stade où finalement on a trouvé notre propre arrangement avec cet élément, là, ça ouvre vraiment des portes pour le possible. C'est vraiment, oui, ce moment-là. Mais c'est ça, en fait, les mettre dans une situation d'instabilité. Et le Community Service Learning, l'apprentissage par le service à la communauté, offre une porte pour ça, justement, parce qu'ils sont un peu livrés à eux-mêmes. Et donc, j'essaie de trouver des façons de penser leur expérience qui sont non pas tant par rapport à comment est-ce que tu fais d'habitude ou comment est-ce que tu ferais faire par rapport à ce que quelqu'un t'a dit que tu devrais faire, mais qu'est-ce qui se passe là? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Qu'est-ce qui a fait qu'aujourd'hui tu as été frustré? Quel élément ont travaillé ensemble? Comment ça a transformé ton expérience, etc., etc. Donc c'est vraiment ce travail que j'essaie de faire. Ouais.
Je me demandais justement, parce que tu parlais de l'instar et d'être à l'aise dans l'instar, finalement c'est un peu ça, un des propos de ce travail. Je me demande comment on peut concilier par la suite. Moi, la façon dont je le vois, ça reste une expérience très enrichissante et unique, mais une fois que ces étudiants-là, qui seront des professeurs plus tard, sortiront et qu'ils iront dans le cadre institutionnel où on leur demande que de régularité, ou presque, je me demande dans quelle mesure c'est transférable, cette expérience-là, dans un cadre institutionnel qui reste, malheureusement ou heureusement, quand même assez rigide. Est-ce que c'est faisable?
Oui, en fait, ils vont travailler, c'est ça en fait. Je pense que lorsqu'ils vont commencer à penser leur réalité comme étant une différence et non pas une identité, ça ne serait plus un problème après. Ça ne serait plus un problème. Parce que même si après, ils vont effectivement avoir des forces, des éléments qu'il faut leur dire, il faut faire comme ça, mais ils seront, je pense, peut-être mieux outillés conceptuellement pour dire, non, on parle de différence et non pas d'identité, donc je n'ai pas de précis. Vous voyez ce que je veux dire? Il y a un travail, il y a une façon de voir les choses, parce qui est complètement différente. Donc ça ne serait plus un problème. Ça serait pas... Normalement, ça ne serait pas ça. Mais effectivement, je cherche des fonds pour pouvoir faire ce genre de recherche longitudinale et pour pouvoir travailler à long terme. Mais bon, il faut d'abord convaincre les bailleurs de fonds qu'ils comprennent déjà la posture déjà au départ. Ouais. Oui, José? Ouais. Alors, comme je dis, c'est la première, c'était la première itération. Hein. Donc, une chose que j'ai faite, c'est que je donnais très peu de détails. Je leur demandais, je disais, voici les grandes lignes, faites. Et donc, par exemple, pour le poster, j'ai donné très peu de détails. J'ai dit, voilà, je voudrais que vous fassiez un poster qui parle de telle chose, mais soyez créatifs. C'était ça. Et j'ai expliqué pourquoi je ne donnais pas de détails. Et ça a bien marché. Et bon, les étudiants avec qui j'ai pu m'entretenir ont aimé justement cette liberté. Maintenant, au bout du compte, il faut que je donne une note aussi. Donc c'est tout vous voyez comment tout est lié. Hein. C'est vraiment un agencement qui transforme tout. Et donc, forcément, à un moment donné, il faudrait que je pense à l'évaluation. Et comment est-ce quelle serait une évaluation donc de l'usienne qui serait vraiment fondée sur le changement, quels critères qu'on pourrait utiliser, etc., etc. C'est vraiment une question pour moi qui me fascine. Je ne suis pas un expert en évaluation, mais s'il y a quelqu'un qui voudrait travailler là-dessus avec moi, ce serait quelque chose d'extrêmement, je pense, fascinant à faire. Retravailler, reconceptualiser ces notions de critères, de non, etc. Ça serait quelque chose de fascinant à faire. Ouais.
Ça vient vraiment bien avec cette notion d'agencement aussi. L'évaluation, évidemment, n'est plus perçue comme simplement le regard de l'évaluateur, enseignant qui évalue, c'est plutôt le dialogue aussi avec la personne qui sait mieux, en fin de compte, ce qui s'est passé pour arriver à ce niveau-là chez les étudiants. Donc je crois que si on fait rentrer cette notion de dialogue, je ne veux pas dire auto-évaluation, parce que de toute manière, c'est l'évaluateur aussi. Mais vraiment cette notion de dialogue entre les différents regards et le regard intérieur de l'étudiant qui lui-même, dans le dialogue, peut énoncer les transformations qu'il a subies. Je crois que c'est des pistes.
C'est justement les pistes que j'essaie de poursuivre, notamment avec le blog et les discussions sur le forum. C'est vraiment ça, en fait, c'était pour créer ce genre de dialogue. Mais au bout du compte, c'était toujours ça, il fallait que je fasse des critères, mais des critères qui soient communs à tout le monde. Et c'est ça en fait qui est un peu gênant à bout du compte. Et donc c'est ça qui me dit quel est le potentiel here. Comment il faut travailler avec ce potentiel pour que ça soit quelque chose de différent. C'est ça en fait, le potentiel. Donc il y a encore du travail à faire à ce niveau-là. Mais je suis d'accord, oui. C'était ça en fait mon point d'entrée. C'était ce dialogue en fait entre les différents étudiants. C'est bon? Bon, ben merci. Merci pour ce dialogue. Ça va?
J'en profite pour remercier Francis et tout le monde d'être venu. Je vous invite à continuer la conversation de façon informelle si vous voulez, à prendre un dernier café. Et on se retrouve peut-être au mois de décembre pour notre prochain cours.
Sure. Well, actually, I worked with the office here, they're very nice. The other ones I find the person. So for in my case, in that course, the time one was in a school, and they worked with a teacher of French, of English, and they help him design some tools to teach English. They work here, another group was working in the department of modern language, and they created a workshop for the teachers, the Spanish teachers. Another one worked in community organization, and they developed an online course for training teachers. Merci d'être. Merci. Oui, ben ouais. Merci pour la question. Merci. Et so it could be it's very broad. It's very different.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking because it's a specific course with specific goals, and they were able to.
Yeah, they were about to find that. So I gave them my goal, what I want them to do, and they're about to find that. But before they finalize any agreement, they always ask me, "This is what we found. This is what the teacher or the person would like us to do. Is that okay?" But I mean, if I could put it in all my classes, I love it. Merci d'être venu. Et pour se voir pendant les vacances. Bonjour à Lisa.
We are working on language, the ESL course where it's going to be just ESL, English, workplace language work. But people are very hesitant. We're finding it difficult to finding the students who are ready to
It is a commitment. It's the commitment.
That is not within regular scheduled class hours.
So this is why it is required that you provide them. Here you cannot have a course. So we cannot have a course with just you have to give them another option. Because of that, you're not able to choose between that and another. So that's why half the students did the CSL. Well, they are very enthusiastic, and others said no for these reasons. They don't have another job,
Yeah, very interesting.
Oh, thank you. No problem. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. C'est super intéressant.
Ah ben merci.
Et dans les forces qui stabilisent versus déstabilisent, est-ce que, bon, pas quand même différent, mais dans le cas de ce cours, est-ce qu'il y avait une force en particulier qui est ressortie, surtout du côté de stabilisation? Oui, c'est une erreur de même chercher.
Oui, je pense que c'est ça. Je pense que c'est pas quelque chose que je recherche. Je cherche vraiment dans cet agencement particulier. Je m'intéresse pas pour
Non, pas de façon générale, mais dans cet agencement particulier, cette classe particulière, est-ce qu'il y en a une qui a servi à stabiliser?
Plus que d'autres, je pense que les pratiques habituelles de faire l'éducation, je pense que c'est ça. C'est vraiment notre façon de penser les choses qui, pour moi, est le vecteur.
De rien.
Essayer d'éviter de penser
Oui, je suis de retour.
ah, mais je veux le faire comme ça, parce que montrez-moi comment faire, reproduire au lieu de produire, ce genre de façon de penser.
Mon mari
Je
est
pense
resté
que moi, sur
ici,
les
donc il
facteurs
faisait les va-et-vient le week-end. Mais alors, je suis venue, et lui, il est parti en Chine.
Non.
Quand on se place dans une théorie de complexité, par exemple, la modélisation, c'est une espèce d'arrêt synchronique sur quelque chose asynchrone, sur quelque chose de synchronique, c'est se dire, voici en ce moment le contenu de... C'est pas parce qu'on crée un modèle qu'on veut le suivre.
Je suis tout à fait, oui, non, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec toi.
On crée des modèles pour comprendre la réalité, puis se dire, voici comment moi je l'interprète. Et ça, les modèles sont pas à propos de réalité seulement. Moi, j'en ai marre. Regarde, je regarde la créer un modèle, c'est une représentation selon nos échelles, nos valeurs, nos caractéristiques.
Je suis d'accord avec toi. Je pense à ce niveau-là, on est d'accord. Mais ce qu'il y a, c'est pas tant le modèle en tant que tel. C'est ce qui m'intéresse, pas tant les choses.
Alors on se dit, oh, c'est vraiment dommage, c'est quand même une ressource qui est intéressante,
je trouve
qui reste
que
inexploitée, qui n'est plus du tout exploitée.
Non, non, t'as raison.
Bon, c'est sûr que ça, j'étais assez surprise, ça marche encore sur ma tablette.
Moi, j'ai même plus de truc pour mettre
on est arrivé à le copier sur une télé, puis après on l'a mis sur... J'en revenais pas, je me suis dit c'était quand même solide comme système, mais... il faut que tu aies une façon, mais ça marche sur ma petite tablette. Je me suis dit, oh, ça marche encore. Mais je sais très bien que les étudiants, c'est avec ça.
Oui.
C'est avec ça. Donc, il faut que ça aille là-dessus pour que...
Ah oui.
Donc, merci.
Je t'envoie un email.
Voilà.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci d'être venu.
Ce sont des dimensions moi, qui m'intéressent énormément.
On va parler.
Cette dimension d'instabilité, c'est aussi comme ça aussi que j'enseignais à